Yeah, so today, this is the start of me reading through a certain translation of the Corpus Hermeticum, which is a core text to the Hermetic philosophy. This is the Timothy Freak and Peter Gandy translation called the Hermetica, the Lost Wisdom of the Pharaohs. And I'm going to just introduce you to this first chapter. So this book is a very good book. It's very digestible. It's written very poetically, and I think you guys will enjoy it.
I do have a quick question. I think we skipped over that a little.
Yeah.
Why is this book so important for anybody to read? Or why has it been important in history? Who has it inspired? Why are we reading it right now?
Well, I think a true important moment is when it was kind of the Hermetica and other Hermetic arts kind of they were rediscovered during the Renaissance in Europe. And if you're aware of the Renaissance in any way, it was kind of this period in Europe when there was a Renaissance, a rebirth of new ideas and new values and new beliefs that kind of came in. And Hermeticism, and especially this text, Hermetica, inspired the people of the time and has led to humanist ideals. If you're familiar with humanism, um, it really kind of brought about those ideas into into philosophy again, because it was sort of lost and broken apart during the medieval time, but it was the old texts were kind of rediscovered, and it was the pieces were put together, and there was a renaissance
Right.
within Hermetica. So yeah,
And it also really ended up inspiring a whole bunch of mystical and magical traditions, even, right? Even to
yes,
add to that. So
yes.
yeah, I guess that's an interesting point to note. Why again we're reading this? Well, that's all for me.
So I don't want to beat around the bush. I would like to get straight into it. So this first chapter is really sets the stage for this book. So the Hermetica is the collection of thoughts and musings of Hermes, the founder of Hermeticism, the mystical figure. And this is the prophecies of Hermes. In this chapter, Hermes describes the nature of pure philosophy, but laments that in the future generations it will become all but lost. Pure philosophy is spiritual striving. Through constant contemplation, to attain true knowledge of Atum, the one God. But speaking now in prophecy, I say that in times to come, no one will pursue philosophy with single-mindedness and purity of heart. Those with a grudging and ungenerous temperament will try and prevent men discovering the priceless gift of immortality. Philosophy will become confused, making it hard to comprehend. It will be corrupted. To speculation it will be entangled with bewildering sciences, like music and geometry. The student of pure philosophy studies the sciences, not as fanciful theories, but as devotion to God, because they reveal a universe perfectly ordered by the power of number, because measuring the depths of the sea and forces of fire and the magnitudes of physical things leads to a revering awe at the Creator's skill and wisdom. Because the mysteries of music bear witness to the unsurpassed talent of the supreme artist, who has beautifully harmonized all things into a single whole, suffused with sweet melodies. To simply love Atum in thought with singleness of heart and to follow the goodness of his will, this is philosophy, unsullied by intrusive cravings for pointless opinions. But I foresee that, in times to come, clever intellectuals will mislead the minds of men, turning them away from pure philosophy. It will be taught that our sacred devotion was ineffective, and the heartfelt piety and the service for which we Egyptians honor Atum was a waste without reward. Egypt is an image of the heavens, and the whole cosmos dwells here. In this its sanctuary, but the gods will desert the earth and return to heaven, abandoning this land. And that once the home of spirituality, Egypt will be forsaken and desolate. presence of the gods will be overrun by foreigners, who will neglect our sacred ways. The holy land of temples and shrines will be filled with corpses and funerals. The sacred Nile will be swollen with blood, and her waters will rise, utterly fouled with gore. Does this make you weep? There is worse to follow. This land, that was a spiritual teacher to all humankind, which loved the gods with such devotion, and they deigned to sojourn here on earth. This land will exceed all others in cruelty. The dead will far outnumber the living, and the survivors will be known as Egyptians, by their language alone. For in their actions they will be like the men of another race. O Egypt, nothing will remain of your religion but an empty tale, which even your own children will not believe. Nothing will be left to tell of your wisdom but old graven stones. Men will be weary of life, and will cease seeing the universe as worthy of reverent wonder. Spirituality, the greatest of all blessings, will be threatened with extinction, and believe the burden to be scorned. The world will no longer be loved as an incomparable work of God, a glorious monument to his primal goodness, an instrument of the divine will to invoke veneration and praise in the beholder. Egypt will be widowed. Every sacred voice will be silenced. Darkness will be preferred to light. No eyes will rise to heaven. The pure will be thought insane, and the impure will be honored as wise. The madman will be believed brave, and the wicked esteemed as good. Knowledge of the immortal soul will be laughed at and denied. No reverent words worthy of heaven will be heard or believed. So I, thrice great Hermes, the first of men to attain all knowledge, have inscribed the secrets of the gods in sacred symbols and in holy hieroglyphs, on which these stone tablets which I have concealed for a future world that may seek our secret wisdom. Through all-seeing mind, I myself have been the witness of the invisible things of heaven, and through contemplation come to the knowledge of the truth. This knowing I have set down in these writings. So that was the prophecies of Hermes. And at first glance, it's quite grim. It's quite somber. It's a warning of something to when this was written, whenever that may have been. The very idea of that in the future was thought impossible. How could something to these people, to Hermes, to a hermeticist, just considered a fact of the world, that there is something greater? How could the world forget? How could the world lose that? And it's a little bleak, but it's interesting to show a kind of warning that Hermes gives us before he even begins with his teachings, is that, you know, a spiritualist philosophy isn't opposed to science. It is a science, but if it's forgotten, how else are the sciences supposed to work? They miss a key component. So I was wondering, does anyone have any thoughts on what I just read? Any thoughts to pass along? Any questions?
I think it's interesting so far, this warning. Don't forget how it works, kids. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Exactly. So we follow this with this itself is really the first chapter of this book, and this is the initiation of Hermes. This is how Hermes came to acquire the knowledge that we're going to see put forth in this book. This is where the whole Hermetic philosophy comes from. Like Tarot Frog said, Hermeticism is very important to occult magic, Western magic especially. So in this chapter, Hermes describes a mystical vision of the creation of the cosmos, upon which all his later teachings are based. So this is very much the foundation of Hermetic philosophy.
Take a seat.
My senses... Oh.
Sorry, somebody came in.
That's fine. My senses were suspended in mystic sleep. Not a weary, full-fed drowsiness, but an alert and conscious emptiness. Released my body. I flew with my thoughts. and while I soared it seemed to me a vast and boundless being called my name. Hermes, what are you looking for? Who are you? I asked. I am the way guide, the supreme mind, the thoughts of Atum, the one God. I am with you, always and everywhere. I know your desires. Make your questions conscious, and they will be answered. Show me the nature of reality. Bless me with the knowledge of God. I begged. Suddenly everything changed before me. Reality was opened out in a moment. I saw the boundless view. All became dissolved in light, united within one joyous love. Yet the light cast a shadow, grim and terrible, which, passing downwards, became like restless water, chaotically tossing forth spume like smoke. And I heard an unspeakable lament, a cry of separation. The light then uttered a word, which calmed the chaotic waters. My guide asked me, "Do you understand the secrets of this vision? I am that light, the mind of God, which exists before the chaotic dark waters of potentiality. My calming word is the Son of God, the idea of beautiful order, the harmony of all things with all things. Primal mind is parent of the word, just as, in your own experience, your human mind gives birth to speech. They cannot be divided one from the other, for life is the union of mind and word. Now fix your attention upon the light and become one with it." When he had said this, he looked to me, eye to eye.
This isn't the place to hang out, guys. Please take it elsewhere. We can hear you while you're in there.
Power within the light, to form an infinite yet ordered world, and I was amazed. I saw in the darkness of the deep, chaotic water, without form, permeated with a subtle, intelligent breath of divine power. Atum's God's word fell on the fertile waters, making them pregnant with all forms. Ordered by the harmony of the word, the four elements came into being. Combining to create the brood of living creatures, the fiery element was articulated as the constellations of the stars, and of the gods of the seven heaven bodies revolving forever in celestial circles. The words then leapt up from the elements of nature, and reunited with mind the Maker, leaving mere matter devoid of intelligence. My guide said, "You have perceived the boundless primal idea, which is before the beginning. By God's will, the elements of nature were born as reflections of this primal thought in the waters of potential. These are the primary things, the prior things, and the first principles of all things in the universe. God's word is the creative idea, the supreme limitless power, which nurtures and provides. For all the things that though it has created, I have shown you everything. Why do you wait? Write the wisdom you have understood in the hieroglyphic characters carved on stone in the holy sanctuary. Make yourself a spiritual guide to those worthy of the gift of knowledge, so that through you, God may save humankind." I was overwhelmed with gratitude to the All-Father who had graced me with this supreme vision. In awe and reverence I prayed, "Please never let me fall away from this knowledge of your being, so that I may enlighten those who are in darkness." Then, with his power in me, I began to speak. The aloof laughed at my words, but others knelt at my feet. I told them to stand and receive the seeds of wisdom, which I will sow in you with these teachers. So listen, men of clay. If you do not pay keen attention, my words will fly past you and wing their way back to the source from which they come. So, this one is not as grim as the prophecies of Hermes, but it is a nice way of kind of tying it all together. So to put it simply, Hermes is kind of experiencing this ecstatic vision where it's God or the source, or in Hermeticism, this kind of divine source of all things, shows Hermes the truth, reality. He enlightens him, illuminates him, and then says to him, teach this to others. And this begins the whole point of this text. The text is a lesson. It's teaching whoever reads, whoever seeks this Hermetic philosophy. Is there any questions about this chapter? Any thoughts?
Does it, at any point, does he describe how the visions were induced?
The only thing here, so at the start he says, my senses were suspended in mystic sleep, not a weary, full-fed drowsiness, but an alert and conscious emptiness, released from my body. So from that, it does kind of sound like an outer-body experience. So
yeah, it sounds like ceremony to me, for sure. You know, liminal state or trance state. But what kind?
Yeah.
But he doesn't describe like anything that he did to bring about that state?
No.
Okay.
There's, in later chapters, there is kind of like, he kind of implies you can kind of like, in a state of meditation, open yourself up to the all, to the supreme mind. It's kind of implied you can receive a similar enlightenment or illumination, but there is no kind of like, this is how I did it, this is how it happened. It's very poetic and mystical.
Gotcha.
That makes sense. Right.
Is it described, like, ideally what would happen if this particular kind of enlightenment were to spread? Like, how it would benefit people, or the world would become whatever? Anything along those lines?
There's, yes, from memory, there is in later chapters where it's kind of, you know, how it would benefit an individual, these teachings would benefit others. It's kind of a sense of a liberation from certain things in the world, and an evolution, if you will. Yeah, so it sets the stage for that, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of that in there for sure.
Thank you.
Later chapter.
So the book does have a nice little commentary on that chapter, and I think I'll read through that, and it can give us kind of how the translator sees this. So it says, Hermes derives his wisdom from a dramatic, mystical revelation, while his mind is alert, yet still and empty. He hears God speaking to him. Hermes asks to be shown the true nature of reality, and suddenly everything begins to change before him. In a mysterious vision, he witnesses the creation of the world. This vision is not meant to be understood intellectually, but contemplated like images from a dream. However, we can explore a little of its deep meaning. Hermes' first experience is of an all-embracing divine light, which he watches cast a shadow like dark, restless water. Later he is told that this light is the mind of God, and the dark waters are the unlimited potential out of which God will fashion the universe. This is a mystical vision of the first act of creation, remarkably similar to the modern scientific theory of the Big Bang. An explosion of light and energy slowly cools to become the black womb of space, into which suns and planets and finally ourselves are born. This birth, like any other birth, is with pain, and Hermes hears a cry of suffering from the turbulent depths. The light then speaks a word which calms the chaotic waters. This word is like a blueprint that will organize a structured cosmos out of the chaos. Modern science might call it fundamental laws of nature. This word is the first idea in the mind of God, from which everything springs. Initiated into the secrets of the creation, Hermes receives his divine mission from the Supreme Being. Only this knowledge, he is told, can save those who live in darkness. Hermes must become a spiritual guide to all of mankind. So I think that summarizes it quite well.
Yeah, I have one more comment to make, just because this is on my mind. The past days, I've been
Yeah.
looking into Jewish Kabbalah, and they have a word which is tefillah, which is a kind of very emotionally loaded prayer, which is kind of like asking a question, right? Like in the beginning. So that really reminded me of that. Yeah, that's all.
Where it also reminds me, I'm not sure if it is biblical or it's kind of like a story, but with in terms of the biblical figure, King Solomon. I can't remember. It might be biblical, so I could be wrong. I'm just doing this from memory. But it said that he did a similar thing where he prayed to God, kind of just like, give me your wisdom. Like, I want to know. I want to have the knowledge. And that's where he kind of received his kind of extraordinary uh, knowledge of things. So
Yeah, like
there's
that's
a
when the
lot of
dam
kind of,
bursts or something, right?
yeah.
Right.
But yeah, it's interesting. Any other thoughts or questions anyone has? Let's see. I think I could probably fit in one more chapter, just one little bit, and we'll see where we go from there. So the next one is called The Being of Atum, so the being of God. In this chapter, Hermes attempts to describe God. Although God cannot be defined with words, Hermes gives some clues for us to contemplate. The being of God. Give me your whole awareness, and concentrate your thoughts, for knowledge for God's being requires deep insight, which comes only as a gift of grace. It is like a plunging torrent of water, whose swiftness outstrips any man who strives to follow it, leaving behind not only the hearer, but even the teacher himself. To conceive of God is difficult. To define him is impossible. The imperfect and the impermanent cannot easily apprehend the eternally perfected. God is whole and constant. In himself he is motionless, yet he is self-moving. He is immaculate, incorruptible and everlasting. He is the supreme absolute reality. He is filled with ideas, which are imperceptible to the senses. And with all-embracing knowledge, God is primal mind. He is too great to be called by the name God. He is hidden, yet obvious everywhere. His being is known through thought alone, yet we see his form before our eyes. He is bodiless, yet embodied in everything. There is nothing which he is not. He has no name, because all names are his name. He is the unity in all things, so we must know him by all names, and call everything God. He is the root and source of all. Everything has a source, except this source itself, which springs from nothing. God is complete like the number one, which remains itself, whether multiplied or divided, and yet generates all numbers. God is the whole, which contains everything. He is one, not two. He is all, not many. The all is not many separate things, but the oneness that subsumes the parts. The all and the one are identical. You think that things are many when you view them as separate, but when you see that they all hang on the one and flow from the one, you will realize they are united, linked together, and connected by a chain of being, from the highest to the lowest, all subject to the will of God. The cosmos is one, as is the sun is one. The moon is one, and the earth is one. Do you think that there are many gods? That is absurd. God is one. God alone is the creator of all that is immortal and all that is mutable. If that seems incredible, just consider yourself. You see, speak, hear, touch, taste, walk, think, and breathe. It is not a different you who does these various things, but one being who does them all. To understand how God makes all things, consider a farmer sowing seeds. Here wheat, here barley. now planting a vine, then an apple tree. Just as the same man plants all these seeds, so God sows immortality in heaven and change on the earth. Throughout the cosmos, he disseminates life and movement, the two great elements that comprise God and his creation. And so everything that is God is called Father, because he begets all things. And from his example, the wise hold begetting children, the most sacred pursuit of human life. God works with nature, within the laws of necessity, creating extinction and renewal, constantly creating creation to display his wisdom. Yet, the things that the eye can see are mere phantoms and illusions. Only those things invisible to the eye are real. Above all are the ideas of beauty and goodness. Just as the eye cannot see the being of God, so it cannot see these great ideas. They are attributes of God alone. They are inseparable from him. They are so perfectly without blemish that God himself is in love with them. There is nothing which God lacks, so nothing that he desires. There is nothing that God can lose, so nothing can cause him grief. God is everything, God makes everything, and everything is a part of God. Therefore he makes himself. This is the glory of God. He is all creative, and this creating is his very being. It is impossible for him to ever stop creating, for God can never cease to be. Mind cannot be enclosed, because everything exists within mind. Nothing is so quick and powerful. Just look at your own experience. Imagine yourself in any foreign land, and quick as your intention, you will be there. Think of an ocean, and there you are. You have not moved as things move, but you have travelled. Fly up to the heavens. You don't need wings. Nothing can obstruct you. Not the burning heat of the sun, or the swirling planets. Pass on to the limits of creation. Do you want to break out beyond the boundaries
Hey, I'm
of the
sorry I'm
cosmos?
late. I'm sorry I'm late. Okay.
Okay. Pass on the limits of creation. Do you want to break out beyond the boundaries of the cosmos? For your mind, even that is possible. Can you sense what power you possess? If you could do all this, then what about the Creator? Try and understand that God is mind. This is how he contains the cosmos. All things are thoughts, which the Creator thinks. So, this chapter really hammers down a core hermetic ideal that reality, the universe, creation, is within the mind of the Creator, God, if you will. So it's interesting, a good way that Hermes, if we say he's the author of the Corpus Hermeticum, the way to kind of understand that is to use your own mind when you envision things, visualize things. You see it, it's instantly there. So imagine that times 100. So yeah, any thoughts on that? Any questions?
One more thing, right? It's for some people maybe very loaded language, you know, like God and Father and all these things. But I'd like to remind people to read between the lines here. You know, these words themselves are symbols for something that is not easily put into words, and that's the challenge here, right? So if you look at these things like symbols of a formula, you know, try picking apart the formula, what is being meant here. And I think this chapter you know, look beyond that language, and there's a lot of pretty deep metaphysics in here that that I think are very good. It's my comment.
I agree.
By the way, both on the comment of, you know, dreams and tying back into the Solomon thing, yeah, I looked it up. It was 1 Kings chapter 3, where he sacrifices the the incense on the altar and has the dream where God says, "What do you want?" and Solomon answers with wisdom. So that one was biblical.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think so. I think yeah, the like Frog said, it's very deeply metaphysical, and yeah, the language, God, the Father, etc. It's very symbolic. It's ways for us to understand it on a deeper level. And like I've said, it is a core component of this chapter, especially, is the oneness of that. Everything is one, and that's a core principle in hermeticism. All things are part of the same mechanism, the same organism. It's all one full system. There is no like opposing forces. It's just one force, one energy, and it is very uplifting.
Yeah, I got one more comment to make, maybe to relate that to something like the Renaissance, right? Where before that kind of thinking, God was something towering above us, and we had to absolutely submit in every way and fear him or something, right? But with this kind of thinking, it levels the playing field, and now there's the understanding that there's a part in human that is divine, and there's maybe also a part that isn't very divine, you know, but it's a very different way of looking at things, and you could see how that ultimately translates into something like, you know, modern day humanism too, where, okay, the playing field has been leveled a couple hundred years ago. We're going to keep doing that and see where we end up. Looking for meaning, right? Looking for building this thing together, and this oneness, and in a sense, yeah, that's all.
I think to finish off those points, I'll read the commentary from the book on this chapter. God is oneness. Everything is a part of one supreme being, like the number one, which is the source of all numbers. God is the source of all, yet just as when the number one is divided or multiplied by itself, it remains one. So God constantly remains the oneness, because he unites everything. His nature is paradoxical. He is the creator who creates himself. He is always hidden from us, yet he is always also the world around us. He has no particular name, because all names refer to him. God is the supreme mind. He is everywhere and always. The human mind is an image of the supreme mind. Through the power of the imagination, it can roam the universe and be like God in all times and in all places. Hermes tells us that if we truly understood the extraordinary power of the human mind, then we would know the nature of God. Everything exists just as an idea within the mind of God. He creates all things, in the same way that our own minds create thoughts. Just as the nature of the mind is to think, so is the nature of God to create. This is not something he did at the beginning of time. He's doing it continuously. God is constantly creating creation and will never stop. God is both the material objects around us and the immaterial thoughts in our minds. The world we see and sense is an illusion. However, compared to the great ideas which only exist in the mind, above all are the ideas of goodness and beauty. These qualities belong to God alone. They can at best be found imperfectly in the material world, but exist in all their perfection in the immaterial world of the mind. They are so perfect that God is in love with them. God is in love with himself. So, any thoughts on that commentary?
Essentially, thinking outside the box, God is the embodiment of the universe. Essentially, is as he's always creating, and the universe will be continuously creating. And that ties in as God being all of existence as well.
For sure.
So,
yeah.
if you want to imagine God's body, then imagine a regular body, but with the universe inside of it, and essentially we're all inside of it as well.
Yeah, that's a very good way of looking at it. It's a very symbolic way of looking at it.
Isn't there a word for that too?
Many traditions.
Adam Kadmon, something like that. Well,
Yeah, the great man. That's the one.
Right on.
Even in a Christian tradition, the body of the church, the body of Christ, the members of that church is all one within it. You can see that as an expression of that idea as well.
Yes.
So yeah, is there any more questions or thoughts from anyone on these 3 chapters we've done so far?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
How about human free will? Like with God, if God is everything, God knows everything. Like, how does that tie in with human free will?
Creation.
Okay.
If you're a creator and you create something, would you want it to do your will, or would you want it to do its own will?
Yeah, and then do the good thing, right?
Because creation, if I was a creator, I would like to create something that would have its own mind and its own way of creating something. Because what would be the purpose of creating something that I know that it's going to create what I want?
I'd like to jump in here for a second, and I feel like what you're describing makes sense, but it's an over personification when the kind of God that is described here is pretty much like a mathematical construct, wherein if you were to describe the motion of all matter and energy in existence as the way information flows within a brain, you could model that as a consciousness. It's practically saying that the universe is a simulation, to put it in more modern language. So I don't think it has to do as much with intention, because all intentions and counter-intentions are included in this conception of the one. So I don't think that that question really makes sense for the kind of entity that's being described in the text.
And yet another different take on how that could play out is, if all of us are, ourselves, part of the massive, consciousness, which is the actual creator itself manifesting, in our own little, body type things, then each of us are, conscious co-creators with it. All of us do have that free will because we all are doing what we want, and then that ultimately in the aggregate creates the manifest reality around us. So, the whole idea of it being free will, but also God knows everything, in that the idea of God being the much larger sense of consciousness of which we are only small parts. The greaterness would know all of the things, whereas each of us would only know our own bits.
Any other comments or questions about that, or thoughts? You got any thoughts about the free will aspect in relation to this stuff, knowledge? Any of your own thoughts you want to put out? Anything that conflicts, or that's also fine, right?
Well,
Got
trying
it.
to figure it out.
That's cool.
Well, yeah, you put a good question in Hermetica. It is expanded on in a later chapter about the creation of humankind. I won't jump straight to that, but to put it simply, from my understanding, because from this book, is that, like what was said earlier, it kind of goes down to that idea of, if God, he gave us free will because he wanted, he could have just created robots that would just know everything and do everything he wanted them to do. So the act of creation it continues with us. But the Hermetic idea is that we're given free will. The free will in the Hermetica is called the divine spark. So it's that little piece of divinity that is kind of imparted into human beings, that gives, in the Hermetic worldview, gives human beings an interesting and peculiar place in the universe, where we have this kind of divine spark. We have this little bit of God in us that enables us to have a free will, to understand creation around us. In that chapter, the one I just read, when he talks about, to understand how this God would work, just look at your own mind. And there we see like a copy, or like a lesser degree from a higher degree. There is where our minds can work that way to a lesser extent. So just as God can be everywhere and be everywhere, everything, etc., etc., we too can use our mind in a similar fashion. So it's kind of like the free will in Hermeticism is kind of like God has set out the rules, the laws of nature. Here is creation, which comes forth from him himself. So simultaneously he creates and is the creation, and we exist within that creation to be to happen. He allows it to happen, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's also pretty
It's a
clear
difficult
that
question.
with this freedom of choice comes a potential for greatness as well as very nasty stuff. I mean, just look around, right? Yeah, Bubble, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. If no one else had any other questions, I noticed in not the last chapter, but the one before that, there was a distinction made between life and motion, implying that like everything that existed were some interplay between those. And I was just wondering if that was meant literally or if that was more of a poetic device.
In Hermeticism, it's probably both. So like, it's like, yes, everything is, because that's in Hermeticism there's the 7 principles, and one of the principles is the principle of rhythm. And the principle of rhythm pertains that everything is in motion. There's a constant vibration to all things. So that can
yeah,
be
that's what I was
physically.
getting at. Is that
Yeah,
it seems
things
like
physically.
it wasn't really a dichotomy.
Yeah. So yeah, it's basically, yeah, you can see it in a physical way, but also in a kind of metaphysical and poetic sense. That's the magic of Hermeticism.
Yeah, Bubble, can I ask you if you were reading between the lines there, what are you finding? What is your interpretation of that particular? If it's an analogy, what would you say it is one for?
I don't think so. My reaction to it was that I wouldn't think that those two things are different. Like for me, I think of pretty much everything in terms of, and especially if you accept the notion of an immanent God whose consciousness is literally everything that exists moving around, it just seems like it's all the same thing, which goes back into like the whole one thing anyways.
Yeah, makes sense.
Any other questions?
That's a question, more a comment. I was just saying, it's amazing how much all of this really lines up a lot with Jewish Kabbalistic interpretations, and so it's really not any surprise to me how Hermetic Kabbalah ended up blending together.
Oh yeah, it's very compatible. They correspond almost. So yeah, definitely.
Is the like the chronology of that known historically? Like Kabbalah is, or at least has become used as more or less a system for combining things to begin with, and Kabbalah got more popular in the Renaissance. So like, do we know which one came first in terms of
The Hermetica we're talking
like
about
similar
is
to
from
Kabbalah?
around 300 is the latest scholarship, I believe. 300 AD. So
Roughly,
then
yeah.
Kabbalah officially only became a thing quite a little later, I believe. But these things, they evolve out of something, of course. And then there's the idea that whenever the things that we were just reading from were put together in the jars that we found them in, there was also the time leading up to that was a lot of syncretism going on between Egyptian, Judaic, and Greek, and other currents of thought, Arabic as well. So yeah, pretty early on, I think there was already a lot of mixing and matching, and it's also interesting to note, this concept in the Hermetica, or some of it. I think it's mostly later Hermetica. Anyway, the perennial philosophy, right? That there's some kind of a wisdom or truth that was maybe lost to us, or again, maybe it's a metaphor just for the truth in general, which we have to get back to. But an idea that mysticism and the teachings are universal at some level, and then there's a lot of cultural interpretations and uniqueness to different systems, but there's also a lot of overlap, and that is what, for many people, including myself, is very meaningful, because it gives a kind of a bearing on reality, with different cultures, different perspectives, different people all over the world and throughout time are coming to similar conclusions on their own or in conjunction, You know, that's interesting. So
Yes.
for sure.
Me, coming from Aztec and Spaniard backgrounds, having that type of mysticism in our culture was really rooted to us. And as you said, we probably lost a great knowledge of, lots of history, because lots of cultures all over the world, all over in time, have come to some of the same conclusions. So that means there is something, that it's really in common to everybody, and we either lost touch to it or somehow, over the ages, it was imposed as rule.
Yeah, or it's
So
like think about how universal soccer is right now, right? Or football, whatever you want to call it. But it's not exactly something you're born with, right? So something so maybe simple to a lot of people, even though there's quite a bunch of rules involved in a certain way of movement and fitness and skill and all these things. It could be lost in us. Maybe the secrets are very simple. We could be sitting on top of them and not even know. Who knows?
yes, yes,
Maybe.
that is, you are very correct.
All right.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
That's why, yeah.
Okay,
Study the
so-
mysteries.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to be planning on doing this every Wednesday. We're going to keep reading through it. Feel free to come along next week. On the Discord, if you look up VR Mystery School online, we have a link to all the social media for the server, and we have a Discord server where we post our events and all that, and the community is there to talk to each other. So we'll be arranging these readings every week, and on there you can find a online copy of this book I'm reading. So if you want to read along or just study it yourself in your own time, I would highly recommend it. It's a great book. Please feel free to do so.
Yeah, it's an archive for free.
So yeah, on archive for free. So that's great.
Now,
So, yeah.